The space above Earth was calm, as stars blinked in the dark sky. But that calm changed when a large ship entered orbit. It was bigger than anything Earth had ever seen. The ship was shaped like a blade, silent and powerful. Its name was Iron Heart. Inside, the leader of the Draxan Empire prepared to begin a new chapter of her life. Her name was Zara, and she was not like others of her kind. She was the Battle Empress, undefeated in war and feared by all. Her people were known for their strength, but Zara was stronger than all of them. She had ended battles before they began. Her voice alone could stop armies. Now, she faced a different challenge every few years. Draxan leaders went through what was called the season. It was a time when their bodies and minds became full of energy. It was not just a need for power. It was something deeper, something personal. They had to find a match, someone who could face their strength and not fall. Most found partners from their own race. But Zara refused to do what others did. I do not want another Draxan, she told the council, her voice clear. They are too weak. I want someone different. The council was shocked. One asked, then who? Empress. Zara pointed at a screen. It showed a simple human soldier. He had no heavy armor, no glowing sword. He was not tall like a Draxan, or fast like a Krell. But he stood alone on a battlefield, guarding a ruined colony. Fires burned around him, but he did not run. His name was Rain. This one, she said. But he is just a human, another elder said. That is why. Zara replied. Rain sat on a broken wall near the old base. The colony had been attacked days ago, but the enemy had pulled back. Most people had left. Rain stayed behind to make sure nothing returned. He had seen things that no one would believe. Giant machines, falling towers, dust that made your skin burn. But he was still here, tired, but alive. Suddenly, the ground shook. The sky turned red. A shadow fell over him. He looked up and saw the massive ship above. He had never seen a Draxan ship in person, but he had heard stories. They did not visit Earth for peace. Before he could react, a beam of light surrounded him. He tried to move, but his body froze. The light pulled him up slowly, like a feather in the wind. Then he was gone. Rain woke up in a round room. The walls were smooth and dark, with lights that pulsed like a heartbeat. He looked around and saw no doors. Then a soft voice spoke. You are awake, human. He turned and saw her. Zara stood tall, her armor shining like metal under firelight. Her eyes were bright, but not cruel. Her face showed power, but also calm. She did not speak again for a long time. She simply looked at him, as if trying to read every part of him. Why am I here? Rain asked. You have been chosen. She said. For what? To survive me. He did not understand. What does that mean? You will see, she said and turned away. The wall behind her opened. 2 guards stepped in and led Rain down a long hallway. He tried to ask more questions, but no one spoke. They brought him to a large arena. It was like an empty city, with metal towers, deep pits, and walls that moved. Above, in a glass chamber, Zara watched. A voice spoke through the air. Human Rain, you will now begin the trial. Fight, endure, survive. He had no weapon, no armor, just himself. Suddenly, the floor shook. A gate opened and a tall robot walked in. Its arms spun like blades. Its eyes glowed red. Rain ran. The robot chased. He found a pipe on the ground and grabbed it. He dodged the robot's strike and hit it in the knee. Sparks flew. The robot turned and grabbed him by the chest. Rain kicked its head, broke its grip, and rolled away. He kept moving. Every few minutes, a new danger came. Some were machines, some were puzzles. Some were waves of heat and cold. But Rain didn't stop. He jumped, he crawled, he climbed. The Empress watched with interest. Most would give up by now. Her advisor said, he does not know how, she replied. Hours passed. Rain was bleeding from a cut on his shoulder. His clothes were torn, but he was still on his feet. Then, everything stopped. A light surrounded him again, and he was lifted into the air. Once more, when he opened his eyes, he was back in the room where he first met Zara. She stood before him, silent You passed, she said at last. Rain didn't speak. He only breathed heavily. Zara stepped closer. Now begins the real test. Rain looked up at her. What test is that? She looked him in the eye. The one no other outsider has survived. And with those words, the door opened again. Light poured in. The Empress turned and walked into it. Rain followed, with no idea what waited beyond. The doors opened wide, and bright blue light filled the hallway. Rain followed Empress Zara through the shining path, his steps slow and careful. He did not know where she was taking him, but his heart stayed strong. He had survived the strange trial below. Now, something deeper was waiting. Zara did not speak. Her armor made no sound as she walked. The corridors seemed endless, made of metal and light, and the walls glowed with soft patterns that moved like waves every few steps. Guards stood on each side. They bowed their heads when she passed, but none looked at Rain. Finally, they reached a round room with a tall ceiling. The air was warm, and the light had turned golden. The room had no sharp edges, only smooth lines and floating shapes. It felt more alive than the rest of the ship. This is the selection chamber, Zara said, turning to face him. It is not a place of war. It is a place of truth. Rain looked around. What does that mean? She stepped forward, eyes calm but focused. Your body passed the first test, but now your spirit will be tested. He frowned. I'm just a soldier. I fight because I have to. Zara nodded. That is why you were chosen. Others fight to win. You fight to protect. There was a silence between them, but it was not cold. It was the silence of understanding. Rain had no reason to trust her, but he did not feel fear. Her presence was heavy, but not cruel. Zara lifted her hand. A small orb of light floated down from above and stopped between them. It pulsed softly. This is a link core, she said. If you accept, it will connect your mind with mine. We will see each other's thoughts, not all. Just enough. Rain didn't move. What happens if I don't accept? Then your trial ends here, she said. You will be returned to Earth. No harm will come to you. You will forget this moment. Rain looked at the orb. He thought of the trial, of the strange machines, of her watching from above. He thought of the way she looked at him not as a test subject, but as someone who might matter. I'll do it, he said. Zara nodded once, then touched it. Rain raised his hand and placed his fingers on the light dot at once. The room disappeared. He found himself standing in a dark space. Stars moved around him. Time felt slower here. In front of him stood Zara, but not in armor. She wore simple clothing, like soft cloth. Her face had no sharpness. She looked younger, tired. Human, this is the inside of the link, she said. Rayn looked at his own hands. They glowed faintly. Am I dreaming? No. You are inside the memory space. She replied, Here, you will see what I have lived. Without warning, the stars shifted, and a battlefield appeared. A younger Zara stood in the center, holding a broken flag. Round her were fallen soldiers. Some were enemies, some were her own. The sky was red. Smoke rose from burning ships. I was 16 when I first led an army, she said. We won, but I lost 2,000 lives. I never forgot their faces. Rain stepped forward. You were only a girl. I had no choice. Draxons do not wait to grow. We rise or we fall. More memories appeared. Zara at war. Zara in meetings with the council. Zara alone in a large hall. Her eyes tired, her body still in armor. Always in armor. No one has ever matched my strength, she said quietly. Not in battle. Not in thought. Not in the heart. Rain looked at her. So you search beyond your people. She nodded. The season is not just about the body. It is about finding someone who can share the weight. Someone who can walk beside me, not behind me. Rain felt the link grow stronger. He didn't just see her memories now. He felt her pain, her fear, her pride, and somehow he knew she could feel his too. He thought of his parents. He saw the day he lost a friend in battle. He remembered how it felt to be the last one standing while others were taken by war. Zara saw it all. You do not run from pain, she said. You carry it. That's what life is, Rain said. We keep going. That's all. The stars began to fade. The memory space faded. The golden room returned. The orb had vanished. The link was complete. Zara stepped closer. You did not break. That is rare. Rand was quiet for a moment. That's not strength. It's just what needs to be done. Zara gave the smallest smile. And that is why you are not like the others. She raised her arm, and the room changed again. The walls opened to reveal a balcony. Outside, a glowing storm moved in the distance. Blue wind swirled across the stars. This ship is alive, she said. It moves with me. But now, it listens to you too. Rand stepped to the edge and looked at the stars. What happens now? The final test begins soon, Zara said. But it is not one of war. It is the one that decides everything. Rand looked at her. You still think I might fail? She turned to him. You are human. Your kind has never been through this process. You may not survive it. Rand did not back away. I'll take that risk. She studied him again, silent. Finally, she said, Then prepare yourself. You have 1 day. Rand nodded. Then I'll be ready. Zara looked at the storm outside. We'll see. And the wind outside grew louder, as if the ship itself knew that something powerful was coming. Rand sat alone in a quiet chamber. It was simple, with no furniture except for a resting platform. The walls gave off a soft blue glow. He had been given food, clean clothes, and silence. No guards, no orders. Just time to think. Outside his room, the great ship Ironheart moved through space like a shadow. It was headed toward the Draxon starfield, far from any human territory. Rand looked out of the window and saw stars he had never seen before. They looked cold and sharp, like swords in the sky. His thoughts were calm. He had seen much since being taken from Earth. He had survived a strange trial, connected with a powerful leader, and stepped into a world unlike anything he had known. But now he was heading towards something unknown. Something final. A soft knock broke the silence. The door slid open. A Draxon warrior stood tall, his armor dark with red lines. It is time, the guard said. Rand stood without question and followed him through the wide halls of the ship. They passed large windows, long corridors, and symbols written in a language Rand did not understand. But he kept walking. Finally, the hallway opened into a massive chamber. The walls were curved like a sphere. Lights moved slowly across the ceiling like stars. The floor below was a giant ring, and in the center stood Empress Zara. She wore no armor today. Her clothing was light but strong, and her hair was tied behind her back. Her eyes were steady, calm, and clear. Rand stepped forward. He did not speak. He waited. Zara raised her hand. The lights in the room dimmed. The air became heavy. The chamber began to shift. Small platforms rose from the ground. Strange shapes appeared in the air like puzzles waiting to be solved. This is the core arena, she said. Here, the test is not just of the body. It is of the mind, the spirit, and the will. Rand looked around. What do I need to do? Survive, she said simply. No more, no less. The floor moved suddenly. Rand jumped to the side as a beam of light shot upward. Then a panel opened, and a tall machine stepped out. Its arms had sharp claws. Its body was fast and silver. Rand had no weapon, but he had been trained to use his surroundings. The machine charged. Rand rolled under a platform, grabbed a metal pipe from the ground, and jumped up. He slammed the pipe into the side of the machine's head. Sparks flew, but it didn't fall. It turned fast. Grabbing at him, Rand dodged again, leaping onto a rising platform. He jumped from one to another, staying ahead. He waited for the machine to make a mistake. Then, as it swung wide, he struck again, this time at its leg joint. The machine fell with a loud crash. The lights blinked. A voice echoed from above. Stage 1, complete. Zara did not clap. She only watched. Her face showed nothing. Then the second trial began. The floor opened again. This time, a group of flying spheres came out. They shot small beams of heat. Rand covered his face and ran for cover. The beams were not strong enough to kill, but they burned. He needed to be faster, smarter. He picked up a broken part of the first machine and threw it at one of the spheres. It crashed. Then he picked up a broken arm from the ground and used it like a shield, blocking the beams as he ran. One by one, he took down the spheres. He didn't stop. He knew this was more than just a fight. It was a test of what made him human. Zara watched him closely. Her advisor stood behind her in silence. Others would have fallen by now. One of them said, "He learns quickly." Another added, "Zara's eyes didn't leave Rain. He does not rely on power. He relies on choice." The final trial began. The chamber turned dark. A wall of mirrors rose around Rain. Each mirror showed different images: his past, his fears, his regrets. He saw his parents. He saw his fallen friend from the last battle. He saw the destroyed colony. The noise grew loud. Voices whispered doubts. "You should have run. You are not strong enough. She will break you." Rain closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He didn't fight the voices. He let them pass. Then he opened his eyes and said, "I'm still here." The mirrors shattered. The chamber returned to calm. Rain dropped to one knee, breathing hard. The lights above shifted to soft gold. Zara stepped forward. Her voice echoed through the chamber. "You have passed." Rain looked up, sweat on his face. "What now?" She walked down from her platform and stood before him. "Now begins the final path," she said. "You have survived machines, heat, fear, and doubt. You showed strength, not through force, but through choice." Rain slowly stood. Zara studied his face. "You are the first human to stand in this place and remain standing." Rain gave a small smile. "Is that good?" She gave the smallest nod. "It is rare." Guards entered and waited at the edge of the chamber. Zara raised her hand, and they left without a word. Only she and Rain remained. "You have done what no other outsider has done," she said. "But the path is not over." Rain met her eyes. "Then show me the way." Zara looked at the stars above. "Tomorrow, we enter the core flame. It is the heart of my kind's tradition. No outsider has ever touched it. If you enter, there is no turning back." Rain stood straight. "Then I'll be ready." She looked at him for a long time. And then, without speaking, she walked away. Rain stayed in the chamber, alone again. But this time, he knew he was not the same. The next day arrived quietly. There were no horns, no alarms, no voices in the hallway. The great warship Ironheart moved slowly through the stars. It now floated near a glowing blue planet called Velmara, a sacred place known only to the Draxan people. The planet was surrounded by energy rings, shining softly like a crown. Inside the ship, deep in its center, Empress Zara stood in front of a large circular door. It was carved with ancient symbols. The air around it felt warm, like the beginning of a storm. Behind her, Rain arrived. He had been guided by two silent guards. His clothes were plain, but his eyes were clear. He stopped beside her. "Is this the place?" Zara nodded. "This is the entrance to the core flame." Rain looked at the symbols. They seemed to move slightly, like they were alive. "What happens inside?" Zara turned to face him. "The core flame is where the Draxan spirit awakens. When one enters during the season, their energy rises to its highest level. It is both a blessing and a test." Rain listened closely. "My people believe that true connection must survive the core. If it does not, it was never real," she added. "Many do not even attempt it. Those who do must carry the burden of what they see and feel." Rain looked straight at her. "You still want me to go in?" "I do not force you," she replied. "But if we go together, and if you survive, then everything changes. Not just for us, but for both our worlds." Rain didn't look away. "Then I'm ready." Zara raised her hand. The great door opened slowly, revealing a long path made of smooth white stone. On both sides, golden fire floated in the air. It did not burn. It shimmered softly, like quiet music. They stepped in together. The path led them to a large chamber shaped like a dome. In the center was a pool of pure light. It didn't look like water or fire. It looked like something between the two. The light pulsed slowly, like a heartbeat. Zara stopped at the edge. "This is the core flame." Rain stepped beside her. He could feel the warmth already. It wasn't hot. It felt more like a memory, something from childhood, safe and deep. But under that feeling was something more powerful, like a storm hiding. Under calm skies, the energy will test your limits, Zara said. If your heart is weak, it will push you back. If your thoughts are broken, it will twist them. If your soul is empty, it will show you nothing. Rain gave a small breath. And if I'm strong, then it will show you what you truly are, she replied, without another word. Zara stepped into the light. She disappeared, as if swallowed gently. Rain stood still for a moment. Then he followed her. At first, he felt nothing, just warmth. Then, he was floating. Not flying, not falling, just floating in a place without walls or sky. The light was all around him, but it didn't blind him. Instead, it showed him pieces of his life. He saw his mother's smile, his father's strong hands, the old tree near his childhood home, his first training mission, the friends he had lost, the quiet moments between battles. Each memory passed like a wave, gentle, then strong. Then the scene changed. He saw Empress Zara not in armor, but in a quiet moment, alone, sitting on a ledge, staring at stars, her hands open, her eyes soft. Then another image, Zara fighting alone against 5 enemies, her body bleeding, but her face calm. Then another, Zara standing before her people, listening to their voices, but holding her silence. Rain began to feel her emotions, her loneliness, her pride, her burden. The core flame was not just showing his heart, it was showing hers, Zara. In her own space within the core, saw Rain as well. She saw him as a small boy, running across fields. She saw him holding a broken tool, fixing an old machine. She saw him standing over a fallen soldier, holding his tears inside. She saw him saving a child during a fire, ignoring his own pain. She saw him sitting alone after every battle, never asking for praise. She had never seen a human this way. Now, she understood why he had not broken. He carried pain without showing it. He carried strength without shouting it. She felt her connection to him deepen, not by choice, but by truth. Back in the chamber, the light around the pool began to rise. Rain opened his eyes. He was no longer floating. He stood in the middle of the core. Zara stood across from him. They both looked different, not in shape, not in body, but in presence. The energy had touched them, changed them. Zara stepped forward. You did not break, Rain nodded. Neither did you. They stood close now. The fire swirled around them, but it did not harm. It danced like it had found something it had waited for. You are not like others, she said. Rain smiled slightly. That's what everyone keeps saying. Zara looked into his eyes. Most who enter the core flame with someone do not come out together. Their connection cannot hold. But we are still here, Rain answered calmly. Then maybe we were meant to be here. The chamber lights dimmed. The fire around them faded. The path opened again. They had passed the final test. When they stepped outside, the guards bowed. The advisors lowered their heads. Zara raised her hand. From this moment forward, this human is not a guest. He is not a test subject. He is not a trial. She looked at Rain. He is a symbol of unity. Rain did not speak. He only stood at her side. And the ship began to move again, taking them both away from the sacred planet, toward a future that neither had expected but both now accepted. The ship Ironheart moved away from the glowing blue planet, silent and smooth in the cold dark of space. Inside the ship, something had changed. It was not in the walls, or the machines, or the lights. It was something deeper. It was in the way the crew looked at Rain now. They no longer saw him as just a human soldier. They now saw him as someone who had passed the core flame, a survivor, a symbol. But Rain did not think of himself that way. He sat in a quiet room, thinking about everything that had happened. His body still felt strange. The core flame had not hurt him, but it had touched something inside him. It had shown him memories, emotions, and truths he had buried long ago. And it had shown him the weight that Empress Zara carried every day. He was tired, but not weak. He was calm, but not empty. The door opened, and Zara entered. She wore simple clothing now, not armor. Her face was softer than before, still powerful, but without the usual wall around her. "You have not slept," she said. Rain shook his head. "Too much on my mind." She sat across from him. "The core does that to people." Rain looked at her. "How many have gone through it with you?" Zara was quiet for a moment. "None." Rain blinked. "None. I allowed no one that close before." She said, "I did not think anyone was strong enough." Rain leaned forward. "And now?" Zara looked him in the eyes. "Now, I know someone is." That night, the Empress called a private council meeting. Only her most trusted advisors were present. Rain stood beside her. The chamber was quiet as she spoke. "I have made my choice," Zara said. "The season has ended. I have found balance. My energy has settled." One advisor, older than the others, stepped forward. "And this balance has come from him?" Zara nodded. "Yes, he is not Draxon, but he has passed every trial. He entered the core and did not break. He has earned my respect." Another advisor asked, "What happens now?" Zara turned toward Rain. "Now, we see what peace looks like." The advisors looked at one another but said nothing more. They bowed and left the room. Only Zara and Rain remained. Rain spoke quietly. "They didn't seem happy." Zara shook her head. "They are not angry, just surprised. They spent their lives believing no outsider could match a Draxon." Rain gave a small smile. "You proved them wrong." She looked at him. "No, we did." The next morning, Zara invited Rain to a sacred place on the ship called the Memory Hall. It was a long path filled with floating images scenes from past battles, leaders, and victories. At the end of the hall was a single empty frame. Zara stopped in front of it. "Every Empress places one memory here, one moment that defines her time." Rain stood beside her, silent. "I used to think it would be a great victory," she said, "or a final war. But now I know. This is the moment." She raised her hand, and a new image appeared in the frame. It showed the two of them standing in the core flame, surrounded by light. No battle, no blood, just calm. Rain looked at it. "You're sure?" Zara nodded. "Yes, this was the moment I stopped being alone. But peace never comes without a price." That evening, a warning signal rang through the ship. A Draxon scout had returned with news. A rival empire, the Tarnak Syndicate, had heard whispers of the Empress's bond with a human. They believed it made her weak. They were now preparing to attack. Zara stood before her generals. "Let them come," she said. "We will show them the truth." Rain stood behind her, listening. Later, in private, he asked, "You think they'll really attack?" Zara looked out the window. "Yes, they think connection is weakness. They do not understand." Rain nodded slowly. "Then let them learn." Zara turned to him. "They will test us, not just in battle, but in belief. They will try to break our bond. That is what they do. That is how they win." Rain took a deep breath. "Then we won't let them." She looked at him for a long moment. "If they break you, they break me too." Rain stepped forward. "Then I won't break." The next day, the Ironheart entered a defensive position near the edge of the Draxon border. Ships gathered around, forming a shield. The Tarnak fleet was not far. Inside the Empress's chambers, the final preparation began. Zara and Rain entered a special link chamber. This time, it was not for testing. It was for sharing energy. "In battle, we fight together," Zara said. "But now we will link deeper. It is risky. It will push your limits." Rain nodded. "I trust you." She stepped into the center, and he followed. The link began. The room filled with light. This was not like the core flame. This was sharper, stronger. The energy rushed into Rain's body. His bones shook. His heartbeat rose. Visions came, fast images of the Tarnak warships, their weapons, their leaders. Emotions poured in: fear, pride, love, pain. Rain gritted his teeth. "I can take it." Zara held her focus. "Hold on." The energy reached its highest point. Rain dropped to one knee. Pain burned through his chest. But he did not fall. He stood again. The link held dot, and then the energy settled. The chamber dimmed. Zara stepped forward and touched his shoulder. "You reached the breaking point." Rain breathed heavily. "But I didn't break." She gave a rare smile. No, you didn't. Far outside, the Tarnic fleet prepared to strike. But the Empress of the Draxan Empire stood ready, and beside her stood a human, the only one who had survived every test, every flame, and every moment that was meant to destroy him. The one who would face the coming war not as a soldier, but as a partner. The battlefield above the Draxan border was quiet now. The stars that once blinked through the darkness were hidden behind the large ships of two powerful empires. On one side stood the Draxan fleet, strong and still. On the other, the Tarnic. Warships floated like hungry beasts, waiting for a reason to strike. Inside the flagship Ironheart, Empress Zara stood on the command deck. Her hands were behind her back. Her eyes were fixed on the enemy ships. She showed no fear. Rain stood beside her, wearing a black uniform given to him by the Draxan guards. It had no rank, no medal, but he wore it with quiet strength. He had no command over troops, but his presence was enough to remind everyone that he had earned his place. A soft beep came from the control panel. A voice spoke. The Tarnic fleet is requesting a message link. Zara gave a single nod. Open it. A large screen appeared in front of them. The face of a Tarnic leader filled the space. He was tall, with gray skin and sharp yellow eyes. His voice was cold. Empress Zara, you stand beside a human. Is this a joke or a message? Zara replied without emotion. It is the truth. The Tarnic leader narrowed his eyes. You were feared because you were unmatched. You ruled alone. Now you share your power with a weaker race. You have lost your strength. Rain stayed quiet. He let her speak. I have lost nothing, Zara said. The human beside me stood in the core flame. He passed trials your kind would not survive. He carries strength in silence. He has done what even my own people could not. The Tarnic leader laughed, then let him speak. Zara looked at Rain. He stepped forward. I don't speak for your kind or mine, Rain said. But I've stood through fire, pain, and pressure, not to prove that I'm better, but to show that unity can be stronger than pride. The Tarnic leader scoffed. Then we will see how strong your unity is. The screen turned black. ZHA turned to her crew. Shields up. Prepare for movement. The air on the ship changed. The comm was over. The fire was close. The first blast came without warning. One of the outer Draxan ships shook under heavy attack. Lights flashed red across the Iron Heart. Zara remained steady. Hold your lines. No retreat. Rain stood by her, ready for whatever was next. The Draxan ships responded quickly. Beams of light shot from their sides, cutting through space. The Tarnic fleet moved like a wave, pushing forward without pause. Inside the command deck, everything moved fast. Voices called out orders, alerts blinked, data streamed across the walls. But in the center of it all stood Zara and Rain. They did not move. They were the eye of the storm. Target their central ship, Zara ordered. Break their focus. Rain watched the screen. He knew this kind of battle. Not the tools, not the technology, but the rhythm. He saw the Tarnic pattern. Their ships moved in circles, protecting one leader. That was their weakness. There, Rain said, pointing. That one controls the others. Zara nodded. Prepare a direct strike. A moment later, a beam from the Iron Heart fired straight at the target ship. The shot was strong and fast. It hit its mark. The enemy ship burst in a flash of light. The Tarnic fleet paused. Their leader was gone. The wave broke. But the battle was not over yet. On one of the smaller Draxan ships, a system failed. Its engine sparked. It started to fall into a nearby asteroid field. If it crashed, many lives would be lost. Zara's team gave the report. The crew is trapped. Systems are locked. Zara turned to Rain. Can you reach them? Rain nodded. Give me a team. Within minutes, Rain was aboard a small rescue ship. The Draxan pilots flew with him, and together they raced toward the falling vessel. Inside the damaged ship, smoke filled the air. Sparks flew from the walls. Rain led the way through the corridors. The crew was trapped behind a locked door. He used a tool to open the emergency panel, working quickly. One of the pilots said, "We only have minutes." Rain kept his hands steady. He didn't panic. He focused on the wires. The the lights, the lock. With one final twist, the door opened. The crew stumbled out. Rain helped carry one who had been injured. The rescue ship returned just in time as they flew away. The damaged ship broke apart behind them. When Rain stepped back onto the Iron Heart, the crew around him stood taller. Some bowed their heads. He had saved Drax's lives. By the end of the day, the Tauren fleet had pulled back. Their plan had failed. They had tested the Empress, but they had not broken her. And now, they had seen something new, something they had never expected. They had seen a human stand beside her, not as a follower, but as a partner. Zara stood at the center of the command deck. The lights were calm now. The danger was gone. She turned to her people. "We stood together," she said, "not as Drax an outsider, but as one force. This is the future." Rain stood beside her, not saying much. He didn't need to. He had shown enough. Later that evening, Zara walked with Rain through the quiet halls of the ship. No guards followed. No lights blinked. It was just them. "You could have died today," she said. "So could you?" Rain replied. "But we didn't," she added. He nodded. "Because we stood together." Zara stopped near a viewing window. The stars outside had returned, clear and peaceful. "You changed the way my people see humans," she said. "And you changed how I see strength." Rain looked at the stars. "I didn't come here to change anything. I just did what I thought was right." She turned to him. "Sometimes that is how change begins." And for the first time since their meeting, there was no test between them. No trial. No fire. Just silence and peace. The stars over the Draxan Empire were calm once again. After many days of battle and tension, silence had returned to the galaxy. The Tauren threat had passed. Their fleet had retreated. And peace was holding. Inside the grand halls of the capital, ship Iron Heart, there was a different kind of movement. The Empress had called a gathering not for war, but for unity. Rain stood in front of a tall mirror, adjusting his simple uniform. He was not dressed as a soldier, not as a leader, but as someone respected. The cloth was dark gray with the silver crest of the Draxan people stitched on the chest. It was the Empress's symbol. When he stepped out, the Draxan guards nodded at him with quiet respect. No one looked at him as an outsider anymore. In the main chamber, the great hall was filled with Draxan nobles, warriors, pilots, and council members. They stood in rows, tall and silent, their eyes fixed on the central platform. Zara entered wearing the ceremonial armor of her rank. It was not the heavy armor of war, but one made for peace, a symbol of strength and control. She stood tall, her eyes calm, her voice strong. "We have survived many battles," she said. "We have defended our people and our borders. But today, we do something greater. We open the path for something new." The crowd listened. For the first time in our history, we welcome a being from another world, not as a prisoner or guest, but as one of our own. She looked at Rain, who stepped forward. "This human has shown courage in danger, honor in trial, and calm in storm. He stood beside me not for power, but for purpose." The room was silent. No one spoke. No one interrupted. Rain turned to face them. "I am not here to change your way of life. I am here because I believe in peace, in trust, and in standing together when it matters." Zara placed her hand over her chest. "Let all Draxan people witness this moment. From this day forward, Rain will be given the Starfire mark. He walks with the Empress's trust." One of the elders stepped forward with a small plate. On it was a silver ring with a red stone glowing at its center. Zara took it and held it out. Rain looked at it for a moment, then gently took the ring and placed it on his right hand. A light flickered in the stone. The Starfire mark had accepted him. A slow sound followed. The Draxan people, one by one, began to place a fist over their chest in respect. First a few, then all. Rain had become more than a visitor. He had become part of their world. Later, when the hall had cleared, Zara and Rain walked through the gardens at the top of the ship. The plants were grown in special chambers, filled with soft lights and fresh air. A quiet breeze moved through the space. Zara walked with slow steps. She seemed more at peace now than ever before. You changed the future of my people, she said. Rain smiled. Maybe I only reminded them that they had a choice. Zara stopped near a glowing tree. She placed her hand gently on its bark. There was a time, she said, when I thought strength meant standing alone, that no one else could match me. But now, I see that strength can also mean choosing not to fight. Rain stood beside her, entrusting someone else to stand with you. She looked at him. You are not like others I've met. He replied, you are not either. For a long moment, they stood there, saying nothing, just letting the quiet speak for them. That night, a message was sent from the Draxon flagship to all surrounding systems. It carried a simple signal. The Empress declares a time of peace across the Empire. People celebrated. Cities lit their skies. Families came out to watch the lights. Children pointed to the stars and spoke of a new age. In the academy halls, young warriors studied the story of the human who stood in the core flame. His courage became a lesson. His actions became legend. Among the guards, stories spread of how Rain rescued a crew alone, how he spoke with calm during war, how he never asked for anything in return. And in the Empress's chamber, Zara removed her armor and placed it aside, not as a sign of weakness, but as a choice to rest. Her people no longer needed fear to lead them. They had something stronger now. Hope. Days passed. Rain began helping in the ambassador chambers, meeting other species, learning about the laws and trade systems. He had no official title, but whenever he spoke, others listened. Zara continued her role as Empress, but she no longer ruled with pressure. She invited voices to her table, even voices that once feared her. She asked questions. She listened. The Draxon Empire began to change, and always, beside the Empress's chair, was an empty seat, a seat only Rain could fill when he was near. One evening, while standing on the ship's outer deck, Rain looked at the stars. Zha joined him. What do you see? She asked. He pointed to the black space ahead. Possibility, she smiled, softly, and fear. He shook his head. That only comes when we close the door. Zara nodded. Then let's leave it open. That night, the stars above the Draxon flagship burned brighter than ever. Not from war, but from peace. A human had entered the heart of an alien empire. And left it changed forever.